Lenin is now in charge of Russia. He's defeated the whites. He used Trotsky to run the war as war commissar, and he used a system of war communism to do it. War communism is basically an old-style pharaonic command economy. He takes from one group and gives to another. Farm food is delivered to trucks that go to the cities, and the cities, in theory at least, bring tools and equipment that farmers need and fertilizers that farmers need to grow the food. But nobody makes a profit, and it's basically incredibly inefficient, and there's a black market. After the war is won, and after he has eclipsed all of his political rivals, Lenin shifts to a new system known as war communism. To the new economic plan, the NEP, because history is very obscurantist when it comes to naming things. The NEP isn't going to sound like much to you or me. It is allowing farmers to have vegetable stands. But it's so much more than that. By allowing farmers to have vegetable stands, the government has pulled back from its attempt to control every aspect of the economy from a central bureaucracy. The government is also pulling back from its central control in industry, but in agriculture it goes one step further. The dream of serfs and peasants in Russia from time immemorial is to control the land they live on, to control the land they farm. And when Tsar Alexander II freed the serfs, they didn't have any money. So most of them ended up, in effect, staying de facto slaves on the land of the owners. In World War I, both the socialist revolutionaries and the communists promised land, and the peasants interpreted it as, I get to run the land, I get to own the land, I get to be the farmer. Just like an American family farmer. That's what Russian peasants wanted. And what ended up coming was war communism. But the new economic plan of Lenin is going to allow for farmers to control the land, to in effect own it, to grow what the state needs, but sell anything else. So a new group of wealthy peasants who are fulfilling finally the dreams of Russian serfs and peasants to be their own boss, to decide how to farm their own land, to do it right, to do it themselves, to do it for their families without interference. This is so uncommunist, it's not going to last. Nor is Lenin. In 1923, Lenin has a health crisis, and he's going to die. Now, there are two figures that are in a position to take Lenin's place. One is Leon Trotsky, who ran the war for him, and who is a well-known writer and speaker, and old Bolshevik thinker and intellectual from Jewish background, and most people assume that he's going to take power. But there's the other guy, the guy no one expects. His name, Yosef Vissarionovich Yugashvili, from Georgia. Not the Peach Place north of Florida in the United States, but an Asian country in the Western Caucasus near the eastern shore of the Black Sea. Yosef Vissarionovich Yugashvili is sent to a theological seminary by his mother as a teenager. But he's a troubled student. He's rambunctious, he's bullying, he's hard to control, impossible to control. So he's invited to leave, and he's happy to do so. No more Orthodox priest in his future. No, he's getting involved in socialist politics and revolution. The first revolutionary name he chooses for himself, because they all have revolutionary names, is Koba, who was a Georgian folk hero, a bit like Robin Hood. But when he gets serious, he changes his name to Stalin. Yes, we're talking about Joseph Stalin. Now, the word Stalin means man of steel. Think about what kind of a guy introduces himself. Hi, I'm Joe Man of Steel. Nice to meet you. That's like saying, hi, I'm Joe Superman. In fact, the man from Krypton is named after Stalin. The man of steel from Krypton is named after the man of steel from Georgia. He's also named after a Nietzschean concept of a human being who's overcome his Christianity, the Ubermensch, or Superman. There's a lot of creepy stuff in that Krypton comic hero's background. He calls himself Man of Steel. What a guy. He gets involved in some bank robberies, does some minor revolution before the war, and ends up getting sent to prison in Siberia, where he lives until the war allows him to move westward. He has a club foot, so he's ineligible for military service. And in 1917, he becomes a Bolshevik organizer. If there's a job that requires creativity, give it to Trotsky. If there's a job that's just grunt work for a mule, give it to Stalin. Stalin's not even a Russian. He's got this pockmarked face, little short guy, clubbed foot, but Stalin is gonna outwork all of them. He works ridiculous hours. He's involved in every bit of detail. There isn't a detail too obscure or too minor for him. He doesn't need to be an intellectual. He just outworks people, and he becomes General Secretary of the Communist Party. Before that, he tried military campaigning. He did an okay job of keeping the whites out of Tsaritsyn, a Volga city that's now called Volgograd, but from the 20s until the 90s, it's called Stalingrad. You've heard of it, and you will hear more about it. But his plan to invade Poland ends in the miracle of the Vistula and disaster. So Stalin is not a general, but he is an organizer, a political administrator par excellence. And what Trotsky doesn't realize is Stalin has placed Stalin loyalists throughout the National Party apparatus. So when Trotsky expects people to rise to the occasion and support him, they kind of don't, because they're already in Stalin's camp. Stalin uses his organization to tilt right against Trotsky, who's too far to the left, with two old Bolsheviks named Zinoviev and Kamenev. When Trotsky is exiled, and he's going to spend the rest of his life wandering the world as a vagabond, maybe doing some criticism of Stalin, until finally in 1940 in Mexico City, a Soviet secret agent introduces an ice pick to Trotsky's skull, assassinating him. Until that point, Trotsky is defeated, a broken man, exiled, and furious at what Stalin is doing in Russia. Meanwhile, in Russia, after getting rid of Trotsky, Stalin doesn't let Zinoviev and Kamenev run things. Who would have thunk? Instead, with a guy named Nikolai Bukharin, he tilts left, saying that Zinoviev and Kamenev are too far to the right. So, he gets rid of Zinoviev and Kamenev, and then Bukharin, who has a sense of the man, quietly steps back and allows Stalin to take the lead, which is the right thing to do. It gives him about 8 more years of life, until finally Stalin gets around to him. So Stalin is now in charge. The next video, what Stalin does with his power.